Welcome to Calaveras Behind the Badge, where our commitment to community engagement, transparency, and open dialogue takes center stage. I'm Greg Stark, a lieutenant with the Calaveras County Sheriff's Office, public information officer, and your host as we explore the challenges we face and the role of law enforcement. So whether you're tuning in during your morning commute, at home, or on a hike through our beautiful county, we're glad to have you with us, and let's get started. In today's episode, we're diving into the Calaveras County Probation Office with Chief Probation Officer Kim Craddock. Welcome.
Thank you.
So how do you want me to address you? Do you want me Chief Probation Officer Craddock or?
Kim is fine.
Kim is fine?
Unless you knew me from grammar school or high school, and then they still call me Sissy.
Okay. All right. So before we get started, I think it's important that, as always, we find out who we're talking to and a little bit of history behind our guests. So if you don't mind, maybe introduce yourself, share a little bit about your background.
All right. My name's Kim Craddock. I grew up in Railroad Flat. Went to Railroad Flat Elementary, kindergarten through 8th grade, graduated from Calaveras High School. Did not know what I was going to do with my life after college, so I went to Columbia College for a few years and transferred down to Stanislaus State, and I got an AA in cultural anthropology.
Okay.
I know, that's kind of...
It translates.
Yeah. At the time, I'd already had a child while I was in college, and I was working in a daycare, and her husband was the assistant chief probation officer here, Richard Manders. Mm-hmm. And so about the time I graduated, they had a part-time opening. I had no idea what probation was. For a probation aide, they just needed some help. It was 30 hours a week, so I did that. And I got a job with what is now the Resource Connection, but it was the Human Resource Council back then. Okay. Doing parenting services. So I'd go into people's homes, help them, kind of walk them through how to clean your house, how to budget, how to grocery shop, interact with their kids and all that kind of stuff, and then teach some parenting classes. So life skills that we all, I won't say we all, but most people take for granted. Yes. Helping them, be a better person, better household. That's, yeah. I think that's often lost. Like, common sense isn't so common, but how to clean your house properly, how to run a household, run a budget, some of those things slip through the cracks. They do slip through the cracks. And I think, especially now with the schools, they don't do any of the home ec stuff. Mm-hmm. At least when I was in high school, you did a little home ec and you learned how to, do a little budgeting. Right. Maybe not a whole lot, but at least something. Yeah. Well, they can Google it now. Yes, they can. Right. So I did that. And then eventually the probation aide position became a permanent full-time position. And then in 1997, so I started in 95. In 1997, I was promoted to a deputy probation officer and moved forward and started in the juvenile space. So when you say juvenile space, I take it that probation's cut up into the juvenile side and the adult side? Yes. So probation has the juvenile side that we deal with juveniles very differently than we deal with adults. Mm-hmm. And the adult probation side, it's they're whole different systems. Gotcha. So it's good we have you on today because, talking with some of the members of the community, probation is kind of a, out of the limelight, if you will, for, law enforcement. Law enforcement deputies, police officers, they have their role that's very well known. Correctional officers, they have their job. And even the court system, district attorney, everybody kind of knows what they do. Thank you, right. Law and order. So I think it's important for people to understand that probation plays a vital role in making sure that not only are people held accountable, but they're given resources so they don't reoffend. Correct. So with that in mind, go ahead and, if you can, and shortly kind of outline what are the primary responsibilities, like what is probation's mission, what is their goal, and what are their responsibilities? So if you look to the penal code, probation's job is to support the court. Okay. We are court officers. I am appointed directly by the presiding judge and the Juvenile Justice Commission. And then I work for the county, so it's kind of this weird thing, but I work for the judge, and probation officers work for the judge. It's our job to ensure that the courts are have lawful sentences, that they're well-reasoned. We are the neutral party in the court. We are not for the defendant. We are not for the district attorney, and we give the court neutral recommendations on what should happen to a defendant once they're found responsible for a crime.
So for that, when you say recommend to the court, I mean, that's part of the checks and balances, I assume.
Correct.
So there can't be, or it lessens the possibility of a judge out there either giving out lengthy sentences that aren't justified or giving out sentences that are too lenient.
Correct.
And how do you guys accomplish that?
So when that happens, we generally write what's called a sentencing report. And we interview the defendant. If there's a victim in the case, we will interview the victim. We go through all the available police reports, if there was some court transcripts we can go through, we'll go through those. And then we'll write a report to that, and everything that we've discovered, we go through the person's personal history, their childhood, do they have a substance abuse issue? Is there some trauma that needs to be addressed? Do they have health issues? And we look at all of that involving the case, plus and so everything's different. If it's a very violent offense, that the way we would write that report is a little different than if it was just, receiving stolen property. Mm-hmm. So you kind of balance the severity of the offense, absolutely. And then we have these rules of court we have to go through to determine if they're even eligible for probation. And if they're eligible for probation, then we have to determine if they're suitable for probation. And those are laid out in the rules of court. Mm-hmm. And we apply those and we look at that. We also apply the rules of court to determine how long their prison sentence is going to be. If they get a prison sentence, most felonies are on what's called a triad, so they can be sentenced anywhere from a low term to a midterm to a high term. Okay. And we use the rules of court to determine what is justified there.
So somebody's first time offense, even though it's a severe crime and there could be some great bodily injury, they don't automatically get the max unless there's some, extenuating circumstances.
Correct.
And then somebody who has, the generic term career criminal, who this is their fifth time, maybe they get a bit longer, or the long term.
Correct.
Okay. So when you create these, is this where the terms of probation come out?
And then if we recommend probation, okay, if they're eligible for probation and they're suitable for probation, then yes, that's where we will recommend some terms of probation that includes generally a jail term, mm-hmm.
But
also given everything we've looked at, we feel is necessary to begin some rehabilitation.
Gotcha.
So if there's a history of drug or alcohol use, then we'll recommend drug or alcohol terms. We'll recommend some cognitive behavioral therapies if they have a mental illness, we'll recommend mental health counseling and that kind of stuff.
So you recommend these terms to the judge, if you will, to help the person deal with what caused them or what contributed to them breaking the law.
Correct.
And then it's up to the judge to accept those.
Yes.
And then he can, make them more strict or lenient as he so chooses. And then there's a adjudication, and then once they're on probation, they report to the probation office, usually within 24 hours?
Yes.
Okay.
Usually within 24 hours, and then it's up to us to enforce those terms of probation that the court has imposed.
Okay.
And, again, it depends on the person, mm-hmm. their level of severity. Are they a first-time offender? Are they a repeat offender? So we do what's called a risk assessment to see
mm-hmm.
how likely they are to reoffend.
And that's part of the suitability.
This is once they're on probation. Gotcha. Not how likely they are to reoffend.
Once they're on, gotcha.
But yeah, how likely they are to be successful on probation. And so those people who score low risk, we don't pay a lot of attention to them. Mm-hmm. We'll refer them to their program, check in with them every once in a while, but mm-hmm. we don't interrupt their lives very much mm-hmm. Because the science has found that the lower the risk the person is, the less intervention they need. Mm-hmm. They just, if it's a domestic violence, they need to go through their domestic violence program. As long as they're not bothering the victim, move forward.
Right. So just because they're not checking on them as regularly as you would somebody who's a high risk, they still have, lack of a better term, hoops to jump through and metrics to meet.
Yes,
you still have to go to your program, and if they don't, you'll be notified.
Yes.
They still have to do, whatever they were assigned, and if they don't do that, you're notified, and then they might graduate to maybe a mid-level.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and then when they get to a mid-level, then we're seeing them in person at least once a month, either in the office or in their home.
Okay.
We try to keep that pretty balanced. But again, they're doing their programs and all of that kind of stuff, and we're monitoring all that. And then the high-risk people we see at least twice a month.
Gotcha.
And those folks we'll see once in the office, once in their home.
Okay. And are those scheduled visits at the office, or at their home, or?
So they are scheduled visits at the home if it's a home visit.
Okay.
'Cause there's a big difference between a home visit and a search.
Okay.
So when we're doing a home visit, we're going into the home to meet with them specifically, to sit down on the couch and see how things are going.
Gotcha.
To be able to touch base with their family, so we can see how their family's going and how things are going with their family. Does the family in itself need services?
Right.
If the kids are having issues, do we need to refer them to the food bank? Do we need, to refer the kids to some sort of medical treatment or, kind of help them? And we try to assist with all that. Do they need Medi-Cal? So we'll go in the home and assess that as well, because you really have to take care of the whole family.
Right.
For the individual to be able to.
Yeah, kind of like we talked about before, where you're teaching people life skills.
Yes.
You have to, you have to, but it's beneficial to go in the house and have a home visit and help steer them of, I'm having trouble here, and offering help. Otherwise, they might go off the rails, completely reoffend,
Correct.
re-victimize somebody else, and then they start all over.
Correct.
And then that's just, adding more to the problem, because then they'll never get out.
Correct.
They'll never become a successful member of society. I imagine that's the goal, is a productive member of society. That
is
doesn't
absolutely the goal.
Right.
Yeah.
So that home visit makes sense. And, for those people who aren't listening, explain what a probation search is.
Probation search. So you and I have done many, many probation searches together. So typically if we're going to do a search, we've either gotten some information that there's something going on in the home, there's drugs going on in the home, there are guns in the home, there's stolen property, there's something that
they're violating their terms.
They're violating their terms of probation, and we need to go check it out. So we will go to that person's home and we'll search the home. They won't know we're coming. We'll just show up. We search the home. We find something. We don't find something. Generally, we find something. And they can be arrested on a probation violation. If we find a gun and they're a felon, then they can be arrested for a new law violation. So
not only did they violate, let's go with the gun, they violated their probation, and they have to deal with that issue. They also have a new charge of having a firearm when they're not allowed.
Correct.
So when people sign up for probation, they obviously waive their right to the privacy of their home, right?
Correct.
Okay. So how often does somebody say, you know what, I don't want to be on probation, I'd rather just do my time, and I don't want you coming to my house when I'm out? How often does that happen?
It happens occasionally.
Yeah.
It doesn't really happen all that often.
Most people want out.
Most people want out. Most people want to be with their families.
Right. So I slipped up a little bit and said, go ahead.
I think most people want to be better.
Yeah. I think that's a natural human trait that most people, there are the sociopaths out there that they don't care, they'll do, and they end up in prison.
Absolutely.
But I would imagine most people don't want to be, addicted to drugs or harming other people. That's not most people are inherently, good,
I have found that drug addicts are different people when they're using than when they're sober.
Right. I could verify that. There's that chemical, infestation of their brain and body. They turn into, polar opposite of what they would be.
Exactly.
Usually. So I slipped up a little bit earlier and I said parole. So while we're on that, what's the difference between parole and probation?
It used to be a very simple difference prior to 2011, which was when they did the criminal justice realignment. And prior to 2011, if you went to state prison, you came out, you went on parole.
Okay.
And the people on probation had only served time in jail for the offense. I mean,
Okay.
they may have had prior state prison sentences, but they were on probation for an offense that they had yet to be state prison or sent
county
to
time.
state. Yeah, So they hadn't yet been sent to state prison on that offense.
Okay.
So they were on probation. That was it. It was simple, easy. Your parole, your probation, black and white. When they realigned in 2011, a lot of us refer to it as AB 109. That changed. And so now parole is people who are on life sentences and are eligible for parole,
Okay.
or have committed a serious or violent felony crime.
Gotcha.
Not necessarily in the past, but their current crime.
I gotcha.
Or they're a sex offender.
Okay.
And those are the ones that now end up on parole. All the other ones that go to state prison and come back to probation on post-release community supervision. Most of us refer it to PRCS, and they're supervised by probation now.
So in 2011, a lot of the supervisory responsibilities got pushed back to the local county.
Correct.
So with the pretrial that you guys do, the home visits.
We haven't even brought up pretrial yet.
well,
You're jumping the gun.
I am jumping the gun. So while we're there, let's talk about pretrial, and then we'll move on from it. So pretrial is different from the report that you create.
Pretrial is very different from the report we create, and it's very different from probation, even though probation administers it.
Gotcha.
So what happens is when someone's arrested, probation goes in, we do an assessment of that person. We look at how likely they are to return to court, how likely they are to commit a new offense, and how likely they are to commit a new violent offense.
Gotcha.
And we give that information to the judge in the form of a report. And then the judge and we make no recommendations. We just give that information to the judge, and it's up to the judge to decide whether or not he wants to keep that person in jail, release them on pretrial release without any bond, but supervised by probation.
Okay.
And I shouldn't really say supervise. We more monitor them. It's not nearly as intense as probation. Or hold them on until they can post bail.
Okay.
And those are the judge's choices. If they put them on monitoring with probation, they're assigned a probation officer, and we try to assess what they need to get through this pretrial period. They're not convicted. They're simply charged of a crime, so they have all their rights that you kind of lose when you're sentenced for a crime. When you've been convicted of the crime, you lose certain rights afterwards. So we try to be very careful of their civil rights. And, we'll monitor them as the court sees fit. The court may order them, in a lot of domestic violence cases, they'll order them to be on an electronic monitor so we know they're staying away from the victim. In DUI cases, they often get put on a scram monitor, which is a monitor they wear on their ankle that measures if they've drank alcohol or not. Kind of, Lindsay Lohan wore that famously. Okay. That was her famous bracelet back in the day.
So the electronic monitoring is like the ankle monitor that
everybody kind of knows, where we can track where they're at. And what we do, especially in domestic violence cases, is most of the time those are passive monitors.
Okay.
We'll find out if something happens in the middle of the night, then we won't find out till the next day. We do have an arrangement with your office, though, for the more serious cases, or what appear to be more serious cases, that especially if there's a restraining order involved in a domestic violence case, that gets reported to dispatch instead of to probation.
Right.
So it's an immediate response by law enforcement.
I think there's a pretty important distinction you talked about a minute ago, is the pretrial is, America's justice system is set up as innocent until proven guilty.
Correct. So
you said it, making sure that you don't step on their rights, because, if you're an innocent person and you haven't gotten convicted yet, whether you're wrongfully accused or not, you just can't strip somebody of their rights just because they are arrested. And does the ankle monitor, switching to that, do you put ankle monitors on people on probation after they've been sentenced?
Yes.
Okay.
The difference is when they're on pretrial, that's wholly the discretion of the court.
Gotcha.
We don't impose any terms. When they're on probation or they're on post-release community supervision, they've been convicted of a crime, and this is kind of their sentence for the crime.
Gotcha.
And so we'll put them on a monitor at our discretion.
And it depends on, again, low, high, medium.
It does depend on low, high, medium, but a low or medium can end. Generally, it's high risk who end up, but every once in a while, a low or a high, will end up on a monitor just because we've gotten reports that there's something wrong and something isn't right, and they're violating some kind of order. We suspect them of drug transportation, so we want to know where they're going. And they know ahead of time when we put it on that we're tracking you for these reasons.
Right. And that kind of blows my mind because our office has collaborated with your office where, we think somebody on probation is committing burglaries, and we check the ankle monitor, and sure as heck, you can see them going up to the house the day it was burglarized and leaving.
Correct. And
then the one we had up in Railroad Flat, they went back again to the house that,
yes.
It's amazing how much of a tool, obviously reactive, but how much of a tool those ankle monitors have proven to be.
Well, and with CAL FIRE a couple years ago, we had an arson conviction.
Wow.
Based on the ankle monitor, that the ankle monitor came in very important for that. But we've also had another arson case where the ankle monitor showed that person was not there. And so they never ended up being charged because we were able to prove that they weren't involved in that arson.
So again, just, allowing more information to come to the table. So again, like we said, innocent until proven guilty, and making sure that the guilty parties are prosecuted and held accountable. And, whether you've committed arson before in the past, which is, kind of a heinous crime, that just because you did it in the past doesn't mean that you're responsible for the next one.
And that person had not been convicted of arson in the past. I don't even think they had been suspected, but they were suspected in that particular case. In that particular
one, gotcha.
And we were able to show that they were never there.
Right. Which, that's the goal, is to make sure you hold the right person accountable.
Right.
So with everything we've talked about, you have, the pretrial, you have the reports for trial, the monitoring. And what's your staffing like at the office for Calaveras?
So we have 20 staff. That includes myself. We have 7 currently hired DPOs working, 1 vacant position there, 3 supervising deputy probation officers, 1 that's a juvenile supervisor, 1 that's the court services supervisor, and 1 that's the field supervisor.
Gotcha.
We have 2 probation techs hired currently with 1 vacant position, 2 paralegals, an administrative assistant, a department analyst, and the assistant chief probation officer.
So what are the requirements to become a probation officer?
So for a probation officer, you have to have a 4-year degree.
Okay. Any subject?
It is open to any subject right now. It had been narrowed to some very specific subjects, and we've broadened that to kind of encourage more people to try and come into the field. I think it's good because it gives us more perspectives. Probation officers are very diverse. You have to be able to go out and arrest somebody. You have to be able to search somebody. You have to be able to search their house. You have to be able to drug test them. But you also have to be able to talk to them and work on rehabilitation. We run programming, cognitive behavioral programming in our office. We run some cognitive behavioral programs in the jail to kind of work with people and start getting them rehabilitated as quickly as possible. So you wear all those hats, but then, you also have to know how to work with someone who's mentally ill, and you have to know how to work with someone who's high at that moment, and the different tools to make those interactions successful.
Do they go to is there a probation academy?
There is a probation academy. It's 5 weeks long. So in the first year of hire, you go to the 5-week probation academy, you go to the week-long arrest, search, and seizure academy, and you're in an FTO program to
just kind of round that out. And yeah, there's a lot to learn, and it takes. Yeah, I can't imagine it's only 5 weeks.
It's only 5 weeks. probation department in the state, we're very diverse.
Okay.
Because what works for Calaveras County is not going to work for Sacramento County.
No. And vice versa.
Yeah. And even what works for Calaveras County doesn't work for Sierra County.
Mm-hmm.
We have our own geography. We have our own politics. Counties are very independent. And so those cores are very much on how the rules work generally throughout the state.
Right.
And then it's up to each county to make sure you get the correct training for the individual county.
Gotcha. And our probation officers are armed, correct?
I am the only unarmed probation officer.
Okay.
And I am the only unarmed probation officer because I have been there so long. When I started in 95, it wasn't even dreamed that probation would ever be armed. They started arming with CNU, maybe ACNET, back in the early 2000s.
Early twos.
So then we just had those in that special assignment who were armed. When the PRCSs came out, they had another one armed. And then about 10 years ago when Sam Leach was chief, he was able to finally get the department fully armed.
For those listening, CNU is the Calaveras Narcotics Enforcement Unit, and then ACNET was Amateur Calaveras Tuolumne Narcotics Enforcement Team. And at the time, probation had a person embedded with us in the Calaveras County Sheriff's Office as a liaison to our office, to probation, and then that's where we would act, quickly on the tips that came in that people were using, transporting, manufacturing illicit substances, and that's kind of where the partnership, from my recollection, really gained ground. The Terry Hall, the Gino. Yeah, those early pioneers of that. And I know I missed some people in there. I apologize, but that kind of evolved into our partnership that we have today with what we call our AB 109 deputies. Correct. Or our probation liaisons. Right,
which is now the opposite of that. Your deputies are now embedded with us,
right,
assisting us because, our probation searches when we first became armed and all that, probation didn't do a lot of law enforcement stuff, and that has changed through the years. So having the deputies there has really assisted because you have to go if you find a gun in a felon's house, you have to go from a probation search to a law enforcement search, two different things. And so we have developed a handoff of we stop the probation search and we turn it over to deputies. Right. And having a deputy there full time who really knows what their role is really helpful. But we now more understand their role, so we can know sooner when to cut that off. They also really start to understand probation and what we do. And I think that's been really beneficial. Yeah,
it's interesting. You're talking about that back in 2011 when they started bringing state prisoners, if you will, back to the local county jurisdictions. That's when things got a little bit more serious, in my opinion, for probation, where you're not dealing with the county time. I'm not calling them non-criminal lifetime offenders, but less serious. And they started bringing back more serious offenders to our county. It became imperative for our office to know where they were and what they were doing and share our information more efficiently with your office. And I think that overall gives a better supervision. And having your officers armed in the counties has been, lifesaver on multiple occasions where we can reach out, and now we have 7, 8, 9 people we can call at the drop of a hat to help with fire evacuations or, manhunts, or even just backing up our officers in rural areas.
Well, yeah, and I think it's been especially important in the rural areas because your backup's so far away, and we'll be right there. And, we're going to work on partnering for active shooter kind of stuff, especially in the schools where I am, a quarter of a mile from the grammar school, half a mile from the high school, much closer than you guys are.
Yeah, our rescue task force training we had here in San Andreas last week, your people performed very well. And I would put them in any situation with our deputies where, anywhere in the county, any school, any active threat incident, we could put them in there and, just stop that violent act quickly. You can't put a price tag on that. So when your officers are out there, they're not doing traffic stops?
They don't do traffic stops. That's, we really still, despite the bleed over, we try to stay in the probation lane, deal with probationers, and that kind of stuff. Because we're not trained we're trained law enforcement, but we're not trained in a traffic stop.
Right.
We're not trained to do those kind of things.
So that's maybe where our deputies would come in. If you saw a probationer in a vehicle who shouldn't be driving, or you've had reports of we can affect that stop.
Correct. I mean, we don't do pursuits.
Right.
That's kind of outside. I mean, we don't have the emergency lights. We don't have the equipment.
Right.
But, having your deputies with us, they do.
Right.
And it's happened a few times.
And then it has. And having those deputies with your probation officers as they go into houses with more violent persons and more, you keep using the word career criminals, having the deputies there with a little bit more training and experience, and maybe tactics to address who else might be in there. Because we know the probationer's probably in there, but who else are they hanging out with that may not be so happy to see law enforcement show up?
Correct. And the other nice part of it is when the deputies are with us doing home visits, they begin to build relationships with the probationers that they wouldn't have otherwise had. And so they develop a trust that they didn't have in the past.
That makes it, because again, law enforcement is often seen as the hammer.
Right.
We're there to arrest people and getting people to see that that's not our only goal is to arrest people. Our goal is to, again, we don't want crime. And however we accomplish that, the old saying was stop doing crime, go to jail or move away, and that doesn't work. But we want less crime. And the best way to do that is to monitor people who have committed crimes so they don't commit crimes, give them life, skills.
Life skills. Yes, absolutely.
So we've talked a little bit about, giving life skills and, a little bit of the rehabilitation. How do you approach the balance between rehabilitation and accountability for people that are on probation?
So the rehabilitation stuff we very much focus on. We, like I said, we run our own programs. We do Courage to Change, and we run Parent Project, which is a parenting program for parents of teens. Courage to Change is a cognitive behavioral program that kind of helps people look at why they do the things they do.
Gotcha.
But not quite as in-depth as being with a therapist all the time. And it's a group environment. So we run those programs, and mainly because we don't have any community-based organizations. Those are typically the ones that run those types of programs, but we don't have them.
Right.
So my officers are trained on doing that. On the juvenile side, they run what's called aggression replacement treatment, which is an anger management program for teenagers. They're out there at Calaveras River Academy a couple times a week running that program, and we're looking into other programs for interventions for juveniles that we can run and really work with them to not reoffend and to kind of get those emotions under control and that kind of stuff.
Right.
We drug test, we monitor that they're in their drug program, that if they're mentally ill, that they're going to mental health. We check in with them if they're taking their medication, their mental health medication, and all of that kind of stuff to work on that rehab and work on all that. But when they reoffend or when they violated their terms of probation, we have several things we can do. We can sanction them.
And what does that mean?
So if it's a drug offender, and we'll pick drug offenders just because they're easy examples.
Okay.
We have several things we can do. We can drug test them more, which for many, many people, that's enough of a deterrent to get back on the straight and narrow. We can order more drug treatment. We can order support programs like AA or NA and stuff like that. We can order residential treatment.
Okay.
We can put them in jail on a flash incarceration.
For how long?
Up to 10 days.
Okay.
And you kind of, when you look at that, what is arresting them for 10 days going to accomplish for one, and what is it going to disrupt in their lives? Do they work full time?
Right.
So, is it better to put them in a flash just for the weekend? Are they responsible for getting their kids back and forth to school? We have to weigh all that
Right.
kind of thing. Or we can choose to arrest them and file a violation with the court saying, this just isn't working. Generally, we try all the intermediate sanctions first before we result to an arrest and a violation with the court, because that can often result in a long-term jail sentence for people, or it can result with them going to state prison.
Right. So sticking with the drug charges, you offer the drug treatment programs. How many times do they reoffend before they graduate to going to jail? I know each case is different, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but
right.
In general,
it's so hard to say.
Yeah.
It really is.
Right.
I'm going to treat if they're smoking pot a whole lot different than if they're using fentanyl.
Right.
So you have that array of things, and what is the risk to the community of their relapse?
Right.
And you have to measure that.
Gotcha. And if somebody's switching from drugs, if somebody, let's go back to domestic violence, and one of their terms, and this is one thing I think is kind of hidden in what probation does. The domestic violence incident happened while the suspect was intoxicated. Not giving them an excuse of their actions by any means, but it happened while they're intoxicated. So when they're not intoxicated,
which is 80% of the time.
We'll get back to that. So if you treat the drug or chemical dependency, the likelihood that they're going to reoffend in a domestic violence incident goes down, extremely low.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you about how many, or what is the percentage of persons who use?
I don't know the percentage offhand, but I know it's
pretty. I would say it's
pretty high,
yeah.
And the biggest driver is alcohol.
Yeah, and that's funny you say that, because I was at a meeting one time with a CHP, and somebody said, "What's the worst drug in Calaveras? What's the one you have most problems with?" And we said alcohol.
Absolutely.
And no, illegal drug. Well, you didn't say illegal drug. Alcohol leads to. While it's legal, it still leads to drunk driving. It leads to fights. It leads to anger. It's the most easily accessible.
Yeah.
And I would say, 85 to 90% of issues are caused by somebody on drugs. And this is just Greg Stark talking, not anybody else. By somebody on drugs, trying to get drugs or alcohol, or under the influence of that. It's a huge underlying offense. And the fact that probation helps treat that, that's really where I think you guys have the biggest impact.
Well, in drugs and alcohol also so deeply affect a person's mental health, especially if they have underlying mental health issues.
Right.
And it causes mental health issues. And so if we can treat drug offenses quickly and early, I think it's very important, and it could reduce crime immensely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we were talking about earlier too, the whole family going into the household, and the drug abuse and alcohol abuse that leaches into the next generation of kids and parents and loved ones and aunts and uncles and neighbors having to deal with outbursts that necessarily don't get called into law enforcement. Tracking that and making sure that those people don't reoffend with those drugs it reduces so many other crimes,
right.
So many other either
There's
quality
just
of
that
life,
ripple effect.
Yeah, whether the neighbor being upset because somebody's drunk, playing their music loud, or doing whatever. I think that and don't get me wrong. I'm not saying people shouldn't have spirits and and partake, but some people when they do partake take it too far, and the actions that they have or do spill out past their property. Correct. And now they're affecting other people.
Correct.
Do what you want on your own home with respect to yourself. Don't hurt your kids or anybody else. If you want to, once you start invading other people's, property or well-being, that just, can't be tolerated. So what are some of the other support services do you provide for probationers?
We try to find housing if they're homeless.
Okay.
I mentioned before that we'll get them connected with the food bank if they have some food insecurity issues. We'll try to get them hooked up with mental health. If they need to be hooked up with mental health, we'll try to get them hooked up with Medi-Cal if they need that sort of support. We'll refer them over to Health and Human Services for food stamps, or do they still call it food stamps or EBT now?
Aid.
Yeah, aid. Aid. I don't know what they call it anymore. And so we'll try to include all of those county services that are available.
Right.
That's
interesting with the mental health aspect you're mentioning. Did the use of illegal drugs exacerbate underlying mental health issues, or did the mental health issues cause them to self-medicate? I mean, that is a question that if somebody could answer could make a lot of money, but
absolutely.
It's clearly there's a correlation.
Correct.
They tend to go hand in hand.
They go hand in hand.
And that, how do your officers differentiate between this person is a substance abuser? I mean, do you rely on mental health for that?
Well, I wish we could in the field, but when you're in somebody's home, you don't. You just kind of have to decide if they're having a mental health issue, and because we've brought several for a 5150 of our clients because they're not safe for themselves, they're not safe for others. So we'll have that evaluation done. It's quite common for us to do that.
Those home visits.
Those home visits may result in that. We'll get a call. Your client is acting crazy,
right.
And we'll go out there. And so, and a lot of, I think, that is determined by their history. We tend to know our clients very well.
Right.
We know their history. We know what they've been convicted of. We know those who are the drug users, and those who are mental health users who use drugs. And, you have to know that history, and you have to know that person.
Well, building those packets for the judge, I mean, you get a really intimate look in their life history of what makes them tick. I mean,
you do.
And then when you mentioned, those home visits, I can imagine that those home visits really, really prevent a lot of crimes because, like you said, you get them before they go off the deep end, so to speak.
And I think and this is just anecdotal. It's not anything anybody's ever studied, but I think we noticed that during COVID.
Gotcha.
We weren't allowed to go in people's houses, and so we'd talk to them in the yard. We didn't know what was going on.
Right.
Our visits were over Zoom, and you miss so much of that personal interaction. And when you can go into somebody's house and see how it changed from last month.
Right.
Is it better? Is it worse? Is it the same?
Right.
You can kind of see where they're at and what's kind of going on. And so you can intervene just based on what you see around you, or you can ask the question.
Right. That gradual change, you're not seeing it at the end when it's gone off. I'll keep using deep end, gone off the deep end. Yeah. You can see it kind of slowly degrading, like, hey, we got to stop this.
Right. And that's the point of a home visit is what's going on in the house? Is everything okay? And that's especially important for our mentally ill clients.
Right.
Because, yes, some of them are a quick break, but a lot of them, when their symptoms start coming back, whether they've quit taking their meds or their meds aren't effective anymore, you can kind of see that decline in the way they are in their home. And so you can intervene. You can ask them, are you taking your meds?
Right.
Are they working? How are you feeling? And if you're not seeing that, you don't know.
So in addition to the probation officers doing the home visits, I imagine it's pretty important if somebody, especially a loved one, notices a change in somebody to maybe give you guys a call to come out. And,
yes.
And you say meet them once a month, and let's say day 4 after you leave, instead of waiting,
don't wait the whole month.
Yeah. And they can call.
They can call. They can
Employers can call. Neighbors can call.
Yes, absolutely.
Can they be anonymous?
They can be anonymous.
And because I imagine that's pretty hard for, and going, and again, anecdotal, I am not a trained professional in the mental health practitioner. I'm just speaking from experience. Having people that, parents, loved ones, spouses, dealing with somebody who's in mental crisis, there's a stigma still, and
Correct.
Working hard to get rid of that, but there's that stigma of, I want to get them help, but I don't want to get them in trouble. And that seems like that's
Correct.
probation's wheelhouse.
It is. It is. I mean, especially, and it's even somebody who's relapsed. If we know soon enough, if they're just using, there are things we can do to intervene so it doesn't get worse, so it doesn't get to that point of arrest.
Right. Does anybody ever call up and say, hey, I had a bad weekend and I used?
I've had people come in and say that, yes.
Yeah. That's truly wanting help.
Yes. One of the most interesting things that happens, though, is when people start to get sober.
Okay.
Is they have dreams of using and they don't know if it's real or not.
No.
Oh, and you really feel bad for them because they don't know.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
And so they'll ask to be drug tested because they don't know if they've used or not.
Yeah. And
if that dream was real or not.
Yeah.
And, you reassure them, it's a dream. And
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember,
so it can be tough.
Yeah, I imagine that's where the 10-day flash incarceration could come in handy. If somebody's using, you can put them in for 10 days and at least get them sober enough and enough out of their system to say, hey, you need to start, actually have a conversation, because you can't do that when somebody's chronically using
Correct.
substances.
Correct.
Yeah. So that'd be a good tool that'd be a circumstance for the 10-day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. So we talked a little bit about the probation monitoring and the ankle monitoring, if you will, and then the scam. Is that scram for the alcohol monitoring? How does that work?
So typically it's someone who's got a severe alcohol problem.
Just alcohol, doesn't do marijuana?
It doesn't, just does alcohol.
Okay.
So, typically it's a repeat offender DUI, can be a violent offense that involved alcohol, because a lot of, as you said, a lot of violent offenses occur because of alcohol. Right. And so what it does is we have to make sure that their system is clear of alcohol.
Okay. To start with.
They have to be completely clear, and we put an ankle monitor on them that measures the skin and the release. So, when somebody's hungover and you can smell the alcohol on them? Right. So that's coming through your skin every time you drink. It's just not noticeable for us until it's really bad. Right. So it measures that. Okay. And we can kind of weed out what's called an incidental exposure to alcohol as opposed to drinking. So like if they used hand sanitizer, that's going to come up on the scram. Okay. But we know what that's going to look like.
The graph.
The graph. We know what that's going to look like for hand sanitizer. Okay. Some people's deodorants have alcohol in it, and
might want to switch.
Yeah. So there's lots of things people don't know about that have alcohol in it that will come up on the scram, and that's why it's important to start at zero.
Gotcha.
So that then those just environmental things that they're going to come across, we can look at and say that's not drinking.
So that's taking the old breathalyzer hooked up to your car, whatever that's
correct. IDD.
IDD, taking that to the next level of, I'm not even driving, but I could still get in trouble because I shouldn't be, because that leads me down the path. So the IDD, the ankle monitor, and the
and then we do have a home breathalyzer.
Okay, that was my next. Is there any other technology?
Yeah, there is a home breathalyzer that we use for certain people, because not everybody can wear a monitor. Okay. We don't like putting ankle monitors on people with heart conditions. Their ankles swell, and that can be detrimental to their health, and we don't want to do that. So they do have one they can do at home. It's very inconvenient for them, so we don't like to do it if we don't have to. But it'll ring, and every time it rings, they have to blow into the monitor.
That sounds like a Big Brother test.
It is. And it takes a picture of them, so we can see that it's their face with the test, and it's every couple hours. Wow. And you have like 20 minutes from so you can never be far from home. And it's a tough monitor to have to do. We've done it in just limited circumstances, but
when you have to.
When we have to.
Any technology on the horizon that you guys are looking at, or anything in the works?
Some of the ankle monitors that we're hoping come out and get developed, and part of the problem is being rural and hilly and lots of trees like we are.
Great cell service.
Great cell service, and ankle monitors are based on cell service. So, we use two different that work off Verizon towers and AT&T towers, but they're starting to come out with some that can be worn as a watch.
Oh, wow. So that would help alleviate the ones that you talked about with the ankle problem.
Correct. It would alleviate, but it also, because a lot of our people on probation, they work construction or they work in the woods and they do a lot of wood cutting and they're wearing those big, heavy boots.
Right.
It's really hard to do with an ankle monitor on.
Right.
And it's just less intrusive. People, you don't really need to know that my probationer has an ankle monitor on and I'm watching them. So that kind of gives them that little more freedom and a little bit more privacy.
Right. Especially, I would say,
if they can wear it as a watch. So we're keeping an eye on that technology.
Especially for the ones that the pretrial.
Yes.
That's, again.
Especially for pretrial.
You don't want to, get that stigma or that, because people don't know. They see an ankle monitor, they don't know their pretrial or post or whatnot.
Absolutely. And they don't know why. I mean, sometimes the person's just wearing it because we need to find something out. It's not that they're doing anything wrong. Right. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. They are doing something wrong.
They did something. Yeah.
We're curious about what they're doing wrong.
Right.
But, it's to gather information and it's to, somebody may be wearing it, but they're wearing it, just because they have a stay away order. Maybe they got into a fight, know, and now they're on probation for getting into a fight and the courts ordered them to stay away from the mini mart. Yeah. And so now they're wearing this ankle monitor just because they got into a fight and have to stay away from the mini mart. Right. That's kind of more what I meant, is that it can be for some pretty innocuous things where people are like, really? We have to fulfill the court order. We don't get to pick and choose when the court orders it.
Yeah, they're not always associated with, nefarious activity, like criminal masterminds.
Correct. Sometimes it's really someone you're like, really, we're putting an ankle monitor on him, but the court's ordered it. So yes, we are.
Right. So another topic that comes up is restorative justice.
Yes.
So how does that relate to probation services?
So I think a lot of what probation tries to do, especially in the report writing space, in the sentencing space, is to include the victim of a crime and really get their view on what happened. Mm-hmm. We work closely with victim services at the DA's office when we do that, to make sure that their voice is heard. Right. They really, and what they feel they need. If this person's going on probation, and even if they're going to jail or state prison, they're coming out at some point. Right. And what does that victim need to feel safe while this person's in the community, whether they're on probation or they're coming out of jail or prison? And so what do those terms need to look like, and how do we help them get through that? In some cases, it hasn't happened in many years, but years ago we would connect her to victim services. Victim services has grown immensely, and that's no longer the case, and they're a great resource for us.
So I imagine, and this is just, me talking, I imagine that gives, or does that give the victim some sense of ability to heal because they have a say in. Does that help them?
I hope it's helpful.
Right.
I think for some victims it is. I've met ones where, especially when the sentence doesn't go the way they're hoping, that it's really painful for them.
Yeah, and I've heard that many times, that, victimized for the incident and then victimized because, and sometimes it's not reasonable. I hope they go to jail for the rest of their lives for, a minor crime. That's obviously not going to happen. But there have been some times where, the punishment has been perceived to be a lot more lenient than they would have hoped. And that, you don't want to re-victimize them again.
Correct.
But that's, kind of out of our hands.
It is. The law only allows us to do so much. Yeah. And we have to work within that. Right.
That's a good point. A lot of people, law enforcement, talking with people, you're just going to arrest them and they're going to get out with nothing, and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And, taking the time to educate them. Yeah, I'd love them to stay in jail longer. I'd love them to do this. And I'm sure you would too. We've had long conversations of, we're working within the confines of the California state law put forth by the California state legislature.
Correct.
And wishes and hopes. Hope's not a good plan. I hope it gets better, but it won't until the laws change.
Well, and we could use Prop 36 as an example.
There you go.
The will of the voters, we're going to treat drug offenders. They're going to be felons again, and we're going to give them treatment.
Right.
But the governor has a whole other opinion, and he's not funding that. And,
right.
That's not his problem, in his opinion.
Yeah, and
despite the will of the voters,
right.
and so
and I think that's where the real disconnect comes. Of, I thought we voted on this. I thought we were loud and clear, and Greg Stark talking, not Calaveras County Sheriff's Office, for somebody to come in and exert their will of their what they want to have happen, regardless of what the majority to have happen. Yeah. Dismissing, your opinion. You deal with this every day.
I do.
Right? The sheriffs across the state deal with this every day. They are more of an expert than somebody who sits in the governor's office, and whatever comes from this, from what I say, is whatever. But for somebody to step in, that's really brazen, and I think that's where people really start to lose faith. And it still rolls back onto us. We're there. We, probation, DA, the court system, the correctional officers. We're there dealing with these laws that are passed or just forgotten about. Sure, you guys can have that, but I'm not going to pay for it.
The state's going to pay for it either way.
Exactly.
The state's going to pay for it up front with drug treatment, and we know that works. We had great drug courts in the past, and they were very, very successful programs. We know all that works. But if the state doesn't step up and pay for that, if they don't fund probation to supervise the people who need to be supervised, and they don't fund behavioral health to provide the mental health and substance abuse services that people need, they're going to pay for it in state prison costs.
Right. And it seems like they're turning a blind eye to that because they're like, fine, we'll just give them back to you anyways, which is what they're kind of doing in some degree of you guys don't know what you're doing. We don't need stiffer laws, but the ones we do have, we're going to make Probation County supervise former parolees. And then when they keep coming, we'll just keep sending them down and pushing that cost down to the counties. And they can say, oh, we're lowering our budget. Well, yeah, your budget's fine, but now ours is out of whack.
Yeah. And, and we do a lot to treat those people who come out of state prison, much more than parole does, in my opinion. Right. That's just my opinion.
That's just the probation officer.
If you ask parole, they're going to tell you something different. But, we fund mental health therapist at the probation department. We fund a substance abuse counselor at the therapist. We fund a mental health caseworker to work with the people coming out of state prison who need those services. We even, at the jail, you have your mental health therapist there. You have a position for a substance abuse therapist. If we could ever get it hired to work with them and to start at that point, you have your mental health case managers to help deal with and determine who needs to be in jail and who needs to go to the hospital. We're trying to do all those intervention services, but the state has to help us.
Right. They're not being a very good partner.
No.
And I could say that you're absolutely right. What costs more? Incarcerating somebody for a whole year, and they get the services anyways.
Correct.
They're still going to get mental health. They're still going to get drug treatment. They're still going to, or getting somebody the treatment they need. The family remains intact. The kids are in a better, suitable place with their parents in the household trying to do better.
Correct.
Or removing one of the parents, and don't get me wrong, that could be the best option.
Sometimes, but generally, rarely it's not.
Generally, we want a healthy, happy family, and we're just not getting the tools to allow us to do that.
Yeah.
It's really being, it's really hard. And I just want to make sure the listeners know it's a really long way to come around and say, there are frustrations from the general public regarding law enforcement in general, probation included with us.
Absolutely.
That we cannot overcome.
Correct.
If we violate those laws, we now join the people and get an ankle monitor ourselves.
Correct.
And fighting from the inside, we really, if people are still tuned in at this point. What we really need is people to be vocal to their congressman. It's not a Republican Democrat thing. I'm not trying to make it that. We just want to make sure that the legislature hears clearly with the vote and clearly with the podcast that we're doing and exposing. We need them to do something different than they're doing. What we're doing, you touched on homeless. What they're doing now is not working. It's clearly not working.
Well, I understand the perspective that people go to treatment if they need treatment. There are a lot of people who realize they need mental health or substance abuse treatment and go. But those aren't the people we deal with.
No.
The people we deal with will go to treatment if they're forced. And yes, it takes longer for them to become fully sober, but eventually they do.
Right.
You know, it takes time and it's not a quick process. You know, probation, we used to have up to 5 years to work with a felon on probation. The state has cut us back to 2 years. It's good.
So after 2 years, what happens?
After 2 years, they're just terminated from probation or they go to state prison.
So
whether they're treated or not, it doesn't
whether
matter
they're making
anymore.
progress or not.
Whether they're making progress or not.
And treated or not, progress or not. I think that treated by 2 years, I mean, what happens if it takes 2.5? I mean, there has to be a cutoff. I understand you can't have 10 years.
You can't.
But
well, and I think that is kind of where we are because there are states that have probation just goes on forever and like lingers and there's really no point.
And it's not
fair to anybody. Yeah.
There's no expectation.
Right.
There has to be that.
There has to be a finish line.
Yeah, like, hey, 5 years, you do this or you're going to prison.
Yeah.
And that's usually, enough.
Yeah.
But
and if you can get this done, if they can get it done in 2 years, that's fantastic.
Right.
And I think a lot of people can, especially those low-risk offenders.
Right.
Those low-risk offenders probably don't need to be on longer than 2 years. The high risk, that's a different story.
Yeah, and that's
the drug addicted people.
Yep.
It takes a long time and a lot of work to get sober and a lot of relapse.
Right, and unfortunately that's true. But the only way to stop is to give up, and then
correct,
and that's just not an option.
No.
Anyways, I'll get off my soapbox of the laws that we are held responsible for, but have no say in or funding for, the constant changing of rules that make it difficult for us. So back to your staff a little bit. We'll switch from the probation employee to the probation employees. How do you ensure that they receive the adequate training and resources? I know we're a small county. How does that work out for you?
So training. Every probation officer after the first year is required to do 40 hours of training a year.
40, okay.
40, yes. Wow. That sounds like a lot.
It does.
We do far, far more than that.
That's awesome.
We do a 24-hour of what's called motivational interviewing training every year. And motivational interviewing is a way to talk to somebody to kind of lead them down the path of rehabilitation. You start with somebody, an addict that so a lot of times addicts don't realize they're addicts. And so you and it's a long process and it takes time. And so, but you work on it. Yeah. So we do 24 hours of that every year.
That's awesome. You more than half of your 40 is on talking because you talk to people more than half of what you do.
Correct.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's really how to talk to people, how to work with people, how to really kind of draw them down that path.
Right.
We do training on case planning, which is really allowing the client to say, okay, here's your terms of probation. Here's what we have to do. How do you want to do it? How do you want to break this down?
Right.
Because we may be like, yeah, we need to put you into substance abuse training. And they're like, yeah, well, you can put me into substance abuse, but how are you going to get me there?
Right. Okay. So you
'Cause
set them up to fail if you don't.
Yeah, because transportation is a big issue. And so, they may be more than willing to go to substance abuse, but their bigger concern is how they're going to feed their kids tomorrow.
Right.
And so you have to kind of case plan around all that, and MI is a way to draw out those conversations so that you're truly helping the person, not just, they have this problem, but they have these bigger, more immediate problems that if you address first, it makes them addressing that problem easier.
Kind of gives them ownership in the program.
Correct.
Like, hey, you said this is what you needed.
Correct.
And now you're not doing that. So now you got to do what I said.
And it's all, this is what the court said we had to do. And so, but how do we get there? How are we successful with that? And, in case planning allows that to be a lot client driven.
Right.
So we do a lot of that. But, we also do training on gangs, and we do training on drugs and, different weapons. We have, probation officers are required to qualify every 3 months to carry a gun. So we're out at the range constantly training on firearms. We do simulator training with firearms. We do DTAC training, baton training.
Yeah, so you're busy, and I'm glad you go over and above, because I've never heard a deputy say, or any law enforcement person say, I wish I had less training. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is we get constant training on how to write a probation report.
Okay.
Because those laws constantly change. So we're constantly in the law, how has sentencing changed?
Right.
So you have to get trained on court protocol and court report writing. The chief probation officers has just developed an academy it's running its third academy now down in Fresno for pretrial.
Okay.
And how to do pretrial and how to do it correctly.
Right.
And, so you have juvenile core trainings that you have to do, adult core trainings you have to do. Now you have pretrial trainings you have to do. 40 hours is not enough time to have a well-trained probation officer.
So if they stop changing the laws every year, you can get more efficient in the ones that we have and not have to learn the new way to play. I mean, imagine if the NFL had to learn all new rules every year.
Right.
It would not be very efficient.
It's tough.
Yeah. So with the change in the laws and how are things, evolving, how do you envision, or what do you envision for the probation services in our county? How do you see what do you see for the, 5 years from now? What do you see?
I think 5 years from now, pretrial is going to be a bigger deal than it is.
Okay.
It's just in its infancy now. It's really starting to take hold. The state legislature and, those involved in state government really see pretrial as a way to preserve people's civil rights.
Okay.
There are issues with bail, and pretrial is kind of the solution for the issues of bail. Most people, especially in Calaveras County, being a very poor rural county, simply can't afford bail. And the difference traditionally in staying in and out of jail during the pretrial period is, do you have enough money to post bail?
Right.
And that was simply it. And so I think moving forward, pretrial will be continue to grow. I think probation, right now the state's tries to funnel probation services into other things.
Okay.
Where we are currently we're responsible for connecting to housing services and all that. They now want housing service, and it's like to connect to probation instead of probation connecting the probationers to housing services. And it's that way with a lot of things.
Okay.
So I think
kind of watering it down.
Kind of watering probation down, I think, is an issue. For some reason, the state believes that we are not trained to go and seek these services and make sure people are getting these services. We also have the advent of CalAIM, which is reentry services for people coming out of jail, which probation, that's our role in the world. We've been doing that for many, many years. We work with people as they come out of jail and state prison to make sure they're connected with services. That's kind of being, through CalAIM, handed over to behavioral health.
Okay. That's the I need medication, and that's going to keep going for a certain amount of time, 90 days?
Yeah. So they start working 90 days
prior to
release in getting their services all set up.
Right.
Where traditionally that has been probation's role, the state is turning that over to other entities.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think that's pretty important because when you're in jail, you get your services, you get your medication steadily,
right.
And then when you go out, go get your.
I think that's been a way in most counties. We have in Calaveras County, because we have such a relationship with the sheriff's department in the jail, that when we know one of our probationers is coming out that needs medication, we have already been setting that up with the jail, that they'll give us a blister packet to last 30 days, or they'll call in a prescription. We've been doing that for many years now.
That's huge. That's so huge.
Putting
somebody on the street that is doing better because they're getting their medication, just talk about mental health, again, not a practitioner, and then putting them on the street and say, all right, go get your medication. That's just setting them up to fail again.
We've been doing that for years. The jail will call us when a probationer gets arrested and be like, they have these meds. Can you go to their house, get their meds, and bring them to us so they don't miss their meds while they're in the jail?
Right.
Because
they'll cause problems.
Because it'll cause problems in the jail, but, we also don't have access to their meds at this point until the next day, and they need them now. And so we'll do that, and we have that kind of partnership that allows that to work. Yeah. And I think it's really unique to Calaveras.
That's awesome, and it makes me proud to live in Calaveras. And I thank you for doing that. But it also kind of makes me sad. Like, why are we? Why is that so unique? It should not be. That's. So we've talked a little bit about some of the things that people don't know about probation and educated them on that. What do you feel is one of the biggest misconceptions about probation that you want to dispel?
I think there's a thought out there that's kind of portrayed in the media that probation is simply a link to state prison.
Okay.
Get on probation, you're going to go to state prison.
Right.
And there's this pipeline they talk about. But that is really not probation's goal.
Okay.
Our goal is to keep you out of state prison, to get you the services you need so that you can be on your feet and a productive member of society, that you can be a benefit to your family, that you can be there for your friends, and you can live a happy and productive life.
Right.
State prison's not giving that to anybody.
Yeah, that's that makes it, the rehabilitation and re-entering into society, much more difficult. With that, we've talked about keeping people out and all the effort you guys have done. Do you have any, success stories or something that really just underlines the probation ethos?
You did ask me to think about this, and I have several that had come to mind. I know of a store manager, manages a very big store. Was one of our probationers for many years, a drug addict, and just drove me crazy for a while. Now I see that person, and I'm so thrilled to see them all the time, and they're happy. Their life is good.
Right.
I've have others call. I've had a few that have been off probation for a really long time, cleaned up their record. One's a substance abuse counselor and contacted me and was like, every time I have to renew my license, I have all this problem because of my record. I'm like, well, luckily, California's laws have changed, and it's easy for me to clean up your record. Tell me what you need. Send me this information. I'll send you, and cleaned up the record, and now he doesn't have to go through all that. And
so you had that relationship.
He had that relationship because he was my probationer, and so we cleaned up the record. And I've done that with a few people now, where we've been able to clean up their prior record. So that they can move forward.
Right.
And that's no longer, because state licensing, no matter how long you've been off probation, still goes back. And you can be off probation 20 years for a felony drug offense, and they're still going to go back and hold that against you.
How many times do you need to pay for it?
Right. And it's like, well, why are we worried about this?
Right.
So,
I can see for some jobs, maybe.
Right, for some jobs. But, that's even for a contractor.
Okay.
This was for a substance abuse counselor. Yes, he had felony drug charges. Of course, he's a substance abuse counselor. That's typically their history.
Right.
But it was really negatively affecting him. And so we were able to just go back and clean up the record, and now it's not. And so we've had that for other people.
Yeah, I guess it's not fair for me to say pick the number one out of 30 years.
No, it's not.
I mean,
I'm thinking of all my juvenile kids that are, have very successful lives now, that, they have families and they've moved on, and you would never guess that they had all those issues as a juvenile, and, or some of the younger adults that, Yeah,
I imagine the juvenile ones, getting them the early intervention as quickly as possible, the ability to have a longer, happier life is, that's probably pretty rewarding, where they don't graduate to the, more significant or serious crimes.
Right. And the problem with that is you see very few of them.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple have come back and contacted me, and so I've been very happy to hear that.
When you say see, they kind of move away. And
they move away, and you don't know. You don't know.
Gotcha. I see what you're saying.
So yeah, I've had a couple come back and let me know how well they're doing, and that's, kind of makes your job.
Right.
Makes it well worth it to know that people have moved past where they were.
And I guess if you don't see them again, that's also good.
Yeah.
You hope. You hope
have
that they'll do all right, but
you have the hope,
and not like the same one. It's fifth time, dude.
Yeah,
you don't see him, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So earlier we touched on people calling in and I don't want to say giving information or talking about what this probationer may be needing help and whatnot. What are some of the ways that the community members can do? What can they do to support probation? And other than my rant of calling, the state legislature and helping laws get changed or upheld, what can our local community do? What's the best thing they can do for probation to help you be more successful, and the probation to get off probation?
It's to let us know what's going on.
Okay.
And not just the bad stuff.
Okay, that's a good point.
Not he relapsed or he was drinking less.
That's a good point.
I need to know when they're doing well too, because that may mean my officers, there's very few of them. There's 8 officers for the whole county, right?
Right.
Plus
how many people on probation roughly?
I meant to grab that number and I forgot to do it.
We put a ballpark on it?
300.
So 300 for 8 employees.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And so it may mean that if we get a phone call about how well this person's doing, then maybe we'll skip the home visit that month because we have someone who's crashing and needs us there more than we need to be doing that home visit.
Kind of triage it a little bit.
Yeah. And then we can do that.
So to paraphrase, just more information, good or bad. You're not, not there to violate people, not there to violate their probation, but to make and put them back in jail. It's to, augment the services, additional services. Not saying last resort is jail, but just because you're giving information doesn't mean that we're going to come take your loved one away. It means we're going to give you more services.
Right. I think one of the biggest issues in Calaveras County, and you will probably agree with me, and most people will, is transportation.
Absolutely.
And so, we were doing services up at the church in Railroad Flat for a while because we had such a high number of people in Railroad Flat. So we'll reach out that way in the community when the numbers justify it. Right. But the other thing is, we can also provide rides to court. We try to do that when we can. So if you know that your person on probation needs to get down the hill for treatment or something, whether it's to go to substance abuse or come to probation, go to court, and they don't have a ride, give them a ride or call us and say, hey, they're going to need a ride. Right.
And that's you make up a good point. You touched on it earlier. If I have a job and I have to report to probation 3 times a week, and I have to drive down for drug testing, and let's just use a remote area of the county, let's say Tamarack.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money coming down the hill and back. Not many employers are going to be so happy that you have to leave so often. may lose my job, won't have the money to come down, I can't fulfill my terms, I'm going back to probation. So if it's set up to fail, I might as well fail now and go do what I want to do.
Correct.
So it's nice that you're talking about getting that interview to get the early buy-in, what works for them, really getting that success rate up. That really works. Yeah,
I think a lot of people are stuck with what probation traditionally was, and that was traditionally probation.
Right.
You come to probation, we drug test you, we make sure you've paid your fines and your fees and that you're attending your classes, and that was it.
Right.
That was all we did.
Yeah.
And probation has grown, it has evolved. We've looked at the science behind changing and modifying our behavior to make it easier for people to rehabilitate.
Yeah, what you described may work for the high-risk offender that you need to be monitored, but that's not a cookie cutter.
That's not a cookie cutter, and that doesn't work for the majority of people.
Right. So I think we had a pretty good conversation today, but I want to make sure that we talk about the career path of a probation as it relates to criminal justice. What do you have, graduating class coming out from Calaveras and Bret Harte pretty soon this year? What's your roadmap to probation? Do you guys do ride-alongs? What advice would you give somebody that wants to join?
If they want to join, they can come in and talk to us.
Okay.
But really, if you're graduating from high school and you're going to go into college and that's really what you want to do, go to work in a jail, go to work in a juvenile hall, work in a group home.
Gotcha.
Work around those types of people. Don't necessarily get a degree in criminal justice.
I agree with that 100%.
Get your degree in psychology, sociology.
We'll teach you criminal justice.
We'll teach you. You'll learn that. Mine's in anthropology. Get a degree that you enjoy.
Right.
Not one that you think is going to further your career.
Right.
But, there's all these pathways. There's group homes to work in. There's, jail's always looking for somebody. Juvenile hall's always looking for somebody. Some of the bigger counties have intern programs that they can do.
That's a good point of working in the field that you're in, and with the way that technology is going, you can work and do online classes.
Right.
And kill two birds with one stone.
We've had our technicians have done that.
Okay.
And we were recently able to promote one where she worked as a probation tech for several years while she was working on her degree. She got her degree. We happened to have an opening, and now she's a probation officer.
Nice.
So, we're really supportive of that kind of thing, and we'll try to work around some college stuff. And
so get an entry level in a like-minded field, the group home jail setting, work on your degree at the same time, come in, have a conversation when you're getting close to the graduation, and then hopefully get a job.
And let me tell you, if you can work in a jail or a juvenile hall, probation will be simple.
Yeah, I wish it's not good for recruitment, but the time I spent in the jail, and I know the other deputies in our office that have spent time in the jail, our sheriff was in the jail, a lot of our sergeants worked in jail, learning how to talk to somebody who broke the law in their language to gain trust and respect. There is an absolute knack to that.
There is absolutely.
Absolute knack. Just like there's a knack to talking, selling a doctor a car, you have to talk to your audience, and that audience is very difficult to crack.
Yeah.
It's and they are well in tuned with people who are faking it. And
they can read you like nothing.
I have seen more people in jail assess somebody, an outlier in a minute. Yep. I mean, they can absolutely just drill down like that. Yeah. And it's a knack to do that. And I agree with you. Working in the jail will help you immensely.
Yeah. Just those interpersonal skills that you have to learn.
Yeah. So we've had a pretty good conversation today. I just want to make sure there's anything on the table that you want to cover that we haven't covered, anything you want to, underline, or I think we got pretty good understanding of what probation is as it relates to, integrating with the community.
Right.
Any closing thoughts?
I just hope if people want to move into probation, you can always come to probation office. We are more than happy to talk to you. Like I said.
What number do they call?
754-6466.
There you go. All
209.
Right. Yeah, we're going to go worldwide with this. So.
You have to dial 209 now. You're doing it from a cell phone.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Calaveras Behind the Badge. We appreciate your engagement and hope you found the information valuable. Remember, your feedback and topic suggestions are always welcome as we strive to address the issues that matter most to our community. Stay safe, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon.